everybody. My name is Eric Hartford, and this is the Taking of Phyrix podcast. This is our inaugural episode. We're trying to get this out for Adepticon to provide some previews and information for you guys that are possibly new to the Phyrix system and introduce the three main parties that'll be in control of what's going on over in our space. So, first, Lucas and Judd, you guys are here. Everything's good?
Yep.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas, you want to start off by go ahead and introducing yourself and sort of giving everyone a sort of explanation of, who you are and what you do for Phyrix and whatnot?
Sure. My name's Lucas. I have been kind of the outward-facing face of Phyrix for a couple months now. I've been the one kind of in charge of Adepticon. I've been the point of contact for everyone. In charge of our part of Adepticon. I live here in Fort Worth, Texas, and I play a bunch of different games. I play Horus Heresy. I play Adeptus Titanicus. Basically, everything you could play set in the Horus Heresy, I play. So
Yeah.
I play Adeptus Titanicus. I play Aeronautica Imperialis set in the Horus Heresy. I play Battlefleet Gothic set in the Horus Heresy. I play 30K, and I'm all in on Dark Angels. I have Dark Angels for all those systems. Adeptus Titanicus, I have Legio Crucius, but
I like the all-in attitude on it.
I've been playing Horus Heresy.
I was just saying I appreciate that you play everything under the Heresy envelope. It's what I aspire to be.
Yes, yeah. I'll play a couple other games too, but nothing really serious. Heresy is definitely my passion. I have been playing since probably I think 2015 is when I really got serious about playing Horus Heresy. I had kind of played Warhammer, on and off. I played it in high school when I was a kid, and then kind of how it goes usually is everybody takes a couple years off when they get out of high school, and then they kind of come back to it when they're an adult. Usually, that's kind of how it works. So that's definitely how it worked for me. I came back and played Horus Heresy. I came back and played 40K for a little while, and then I saw those black books and had to play Horus Heresy. The Forge World miniatures, the black books, all of that. I fell in love with it. I attended Adepticon, I think, in 2016 for the first time. And I played Imperial Fist at that Adepticon. I had a really garbage painted Imperial Fist army, but it was the first fully painted army I had ever played with, brought to events.
Yeah.
And going there and doing that really got me hooked on it. And so I've been a long-time Adepticon attendee, and then I've been running stuff here in forward the DFW area for a couple years now.
Right.
Nothing quite this size, but some pretty decent-sized events we've ran before.
Mhm.
So I got a little bit of experience under my belt. So
Awesome.
What about you?
My name is Eric. I am the unofficial official host of this podcast for now. I live in Kansas City, and I actually got into Heresy through Judd. I was working with him and was talking or something about potentially wanting to get into wargaming, but didn't have a point of contact for it. And Judd and I started talking, and we became quick friends. And then my addiction to little plastic armament started there. We decided to go to Adepticon on a whim. I played one game of 40K, and then Judd introduced me to Heresy. And with about 2 months before Adepticon, I bought and painted my first Adepticon models, my first wargaming models ever, in that 2 month span. So I did 2 Betrayal of Calth boxes and a single Leviathan Dreadnought, and rolled into Adepticon in 2018 with not even knowing how to play the game. I brought a big bottle of whiskey and and offered all the drinks I could to the people I was playing, and I was just like, look, I'll make the decisions, but you're going to have to tell me what dice to roll if you ever want to get this this game done in a meaningful time. And honestly, that was such an awesome experience that I was hooked from there. Now, we're several thousand points in, lots of other stuff going on outside of Heresy. I do play a lot of games with a local group, but it kind of rotates from through Necromunda and then some older Star Trek RPGs and stuff like that. So um, that's sort of that. And then actually, as far as how I got to Phyrix, I met David at my first narrative event ever after that Adepticon. The very next event I went to was the first or the second Phyrix event. I think it was the first Phyrix event with an actual story. I think there was one before that that was sort of under David's banner, but he hadn't sort of gotten his legs yet for it. But anyways, that was where I met you, Lucas, and it was pretty awesome. Me and Judd hit the road, went down to Oklahoma, played some games, and yeah, ever since then I've been almost exclusively attending Phyrix events. There's a couple during the lockdown I couldn't get to, but for the most part, I consider myself a pretty heavy attender. So now that we're sort of in control of it, it kind of makes it easier, But Judd,
Yeah.
what do you
Yeah.
you want to introduce yourself, man?
Yeah, I'm Judd. I'm from the Kansas City area as well, as Eric had mentioned. I got into Warhammer in like 1996, 97. Always loved this stuff. Bought my first battle box, which was that like janky one with the weird rhino, the like super small rhino and everything. And I have the most horrendously painted Black Templars ever. Looks like somebody hit it with like 2 layers of Krylon and then splashed some white and then was like, good enough. I have been, I played a lot of Warhammer up until about 7th edition, and then when Horus Heresy came out, I was like, I like this. And I was big into the tournament scene then and was getting really burned out. Started to play in ways that I didn't like. Winning meant more. And then I heard about Horus Heresy and saw the community, which is just, beer and pretzels. Let's go have fun. Fell in love. Played off and on a couple of, I think I went to Adepticon once. Fed my opponents lots of vodka. Aside from that, I was with Eric at the first like official narrative Phyrix event. That's where I met Lucas as well. I'm just in love with everything Heresy. My wallet or my brain aspires to play all the things that Lucas does, but my wallet screams no.
Absolutely.
So that's me in a nutshell.
I think that's one of the things that I appreciate the most about you guys is that we all met through David at that event, and we all have similar like Adepticon, like first Adepticon experiences. It really kind of galvanized us early. At least for me, I grew up with you guys, in the space. So
yeah,
it's been really awesome. But now that we're done introducing everybody, I guess let's talk about a little bit about what Phyrix is and what Phyrix was and what is it going to be in the future. I guess from my standpoint, or actually, Lucas, why don't you take this one? So why don't you explain sort of, I guess, how we got to where we are today, like what David did and how it transferred.
No pressure.
Okay. So our friend, we all have a very good friend. His name is David Komen. David Komen was the founder of the Phyrix event series, and he ran a couple. I think there's 4 of them events before what we're doing now.
Right.
And he had quite the grand vision for the Phyrix, the Phyrix banner. Some of it, we're doing our best to fill those shoes, but unfortunately, last year in December, David passed away suddenly, and us being veterans of the Phyrix events, all of us have been to several of them. We decided that we were not going to let that die with him, and we would continue to raise this banner and try to continue this in his memory,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
And I think that was kind of interesting too, because
so
we were kind of already on the books for Adepticon, right? Like
Oh yeah.
Phyrix had
mhm,
already, like
yeah,
David had
that
already
was
committed
something.
to Adepticon. So it was either leave them
Yeah, he
empty
had
or
committed
fill
to
it.
doing basically half of Adepticon in 2023. He actually did half of Adepticon last year at an event called Fields of Chironia,
Mhm.
but that was not technically under the Phyrix banner. That was something completely different. He had kept Adepticon and Phyrix separate. We decided, because it was going to be our first event taking over from him, we decided to combine them and run Phyrix at Adepticon.
Yeah.
Also, I don't mean to be forward, but Adepticon has a certain level of prestige to it. It's the largest Horus Heresy event in North America, so we wanted to kind of bring it there.
Well, yeah, and we were all
It's
lucky
almost a
too.
logical next step.
Yeah, and we were all lucky too, because we all went to Adepticon previously. We all played narrative at Adepticon, so we
Right,
had seen what the Greying Legion guys had done, and the previous like narrative
right.
holders had done.
And there's big
And that
shoes to
bar is
fill as
definitely
well.
set really freaking high, like really high. So yeah, we basically decided, hey, the commitment's made, let's make it, right. And so I guess
Hmm.
now we're in the prep for Adepticon. We're a week away, a little more than a week away. Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, a week and a half
Oh
ish.
yeah.
we
It
so we made
snuck
that
up on us.
yeah, we made that decision. I guess the thing with David happened in December, and we made this decision like mid-January, right? So in
Yeah, early January.
a little over 2 months, we produced a narrative event, and also like waded through all of the stuff from David to really try and come up with the idea for what he had for it, right? And sort of
Right.
steer this in the direction that we felt is
We're
true to what
attempting
he
to stay
wants.
true.
Hmm.
Yeah, attempting to stay true to his vision as much as we know what it is. Unfortunately, some of the vision is lost.
Yeah,
There's some things that were never written down, that
right.
maybe were only ever captured. We're never even captured.
Yeah,
So we're doing our best as far as what we feel um what we feel is true to the theme and true to the vision.
right. And that's actually a good segue into the narrative discussion, because that was probably the largest hurdle we had to close as a group to move this thing forward. I think anybody knows that you can sit down and find a bunch of tables or hammer out a bunch of tables and set aside a weekend and fire up a narrative game and provide your little one sentence blurb of what's going on. And in a lot of ways David did that, right? Like his blurbs for his events weren't excessively long. They were maybe a paragraph, but what you didn't see, or what wasn't written down, and what made the event so fun was during the event he'd come around and just be like, "Man, you're fighting outside this little storage zone, and you're trying to get control of this." And he would give depth to the world as you were playing on it, and that was really cool from a player perspective, and part of the reason I was so adamant about this continuing, right? um but sadly that doesn't get written down, right? That's all private
Right.
conversations we had.
Yeah,
So
that's
when I sat down to tackle how do we so we first had a discussion about it, and it was like, okay, David's narrative was always top tier, but it was always verbally communicated. Let's write it down, right? And we sat down and I combed through every live stream David ever did, every conversation I had with him, every email, every Discord message, everything, and pieced all these pieces together of everything that I could get as far as the grand design went, and sat down and started writing. And of course, we started with the narrative preview to catch everybody up, because we know that Adepticon brings in a lot of people that aren't in our Phyrix family, and um, the exposure is really nice. So, want to make sure everybody knows what's happening, and the main thing is that right now, um, you know, the Outer Reaches represents the last pages of the first chapter. This is the first system that we were in. This is the, the ingress egress point for everything going on that is Phyrix. And I think with the way this final chapter resolves afterwards, I think a lot of questions are going to be answered as far as what Phyrix actually might be, and also, set up the next chapters to really just launch into hard narrative. And that's what we're really pushing for. We want to fully not only just describe the world, but, like we've talked about it a lot as far as once you have that strong narrative, we can reflect that on the table with the tables we build and put you more immersed into the world of Phyrix, because it is really cool. It is a very, like, knowing a little more than everybody else, I can tell you the setting in the world it does pay off at the end. You got to be patient to get all the story beats to make it pay off, right? And so we got the narrative built. We got Voldemort to hook us up on the audios. That was, I don't even, mind blowing. I could never imagine that the guy that I've spent hundreds of hours painting to this guy in my ears, talking about the Blood Angels and talking about whatever, and to just have his voice crack on that narrative is just, it's surreal, like absolutely surreal. David would have been over the moon happy with how that turned out, I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
And the thing about that, what was really funny about that is like when we were sitting there talking about it, and I was like, you know what? I think it'd be really cool to like have it be a audio production. We took a little. I took a little bit of. I took a little bit of inspiration from the Age of Darkness podcast. JP does his like narrative readings, and those are from he reads from Black Library books. But
Yeah.
I always thought those are really cool, and like I've been a huge fan of the audiobooks themselves, like by narrated by Jonathan Keeble.
Right.
And
yeah,
I didn't think we could get Jonathan Keeble to do it. Or I didn't think we maybe had the budget to get Jonathan Keeble to do it. So you had suggested, you were like, have you heard this guy? I had never heard of him before. Dude, and I was like, yeah, no, I haven't heard of him. You were a little starstruck, and I was just like, I'll just email him.
Yeah.
Whatever. I emailed him, and he was a very super great dude. Hooked us up.
I was so shocked, man, because we were just spitballing, like you said, and when I threw it out, I was like, man, because like Voldemort to me is like his voice is Warhammer. It just is.
He's better than Keeble in some ways.
And yeah, and I was like, there's no way that this guy is going to take his time to read a story that I have written. This is like the first published writing I've done like ever. And I'm going to send it to this guy who, like I said, I've listened to thousands of hours of. But when we heard that first audio, dude, I was never so confident in something ever in my life. I 100% knew this was the right choice. This was the right guy.
Just admit it. You're a fanboy.
I am a fanboy. I am a fanboy for him for sure. I really hope that,
and mad props to him for just like taking a couple of Chucklehead script and reading it for us and giving us the chance to add that multimedia facet to this world and setting. Like,
yeah, and it's really linked to the epic part of, this being an Adepticon. This is not your mom and pop narrative event on a weekend, right? Or your local game store narrative event. This is,
and I also think that it really, I think for the three of us, the narrative portion is like one of the most important portions of the game. Like, are we telling cool stories? Are we making our players feel like they're part of an awesome story? And just having him read the information, like read what Phyrix is about and the overview and everything was just amazing. And it adds to that narrative aspect of this game, of the events and what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think it really, not only does it really align with what we all believe or what we all enjoy, right? I know personally my army has several kit bashed officers from previous Phyrix campaigns that
Bro,
either.
your entire army's kit bashed. You have gone insane.
But I do have
I think your wife wanted to murder me because of it.
Yeah, my addiction is slightly out there for sure. But like I've leaned in on a lot of the narrative, even in my own army, right? I have the same. I call him my Phyrix Praetor. It's the same model I ran at the first Phyrix event, and I've upgraded him over time. Over time, he got a jet up. We changed the list. Now he's got a jetpack, right? Now he's got a different color sword because I know how to paint.
Hell yeah.
Wet blends. Like,
Have you done Sergeant Meltabomb yet?
Sergeant Meltabomb is on the paint desk, or will be very shortly.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had a guy at a previous Phyrix event that stood his ground while the rest of his assault marine unit got ran over by a super heavy Solar Ox tank. He was the only one that lived, and then proceeded to put 2 Meltabombs on that tank before he died. So I've got a model going, and it's just he's got a Meltabomb in each hand. There's Meltabombs on his feet. Like, it's just every Meltabomb bit I have is on that base. And he's, but that's what I love. And I love explaining those stories to people, right? Because it's we all have fun moments when we're playing the game, but when you have that and you're just like, man, that's the guy. Like, that guy that just fought you, that's the guy that did that crazy stuff like a year ago. You have no
That's
clue.
Sergeant Meltabomb.
Exactly.
You don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't mess with Sergeant Meltabomb. Bring me your super heavies. I will make them ruin.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
Exactly. But that's what I like to lead in with my own army, right? So the narrative stories that we tell with Phyrix are an extension of that, or they come from that idea of just like, let's just lay out the world. Let's actually explain how people get around in the system. Let's talk about what they see and what happens. And it's not like
We want to make it easy for players to slot their own characters into Phyrix.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think that was one of the things that kind of made Adepticon interesting, because we did decide to allow Primarchs, right? Which kind of made it interesting narratively to explain, okay, how are the Primarchs here? And there's more to come. I think that'll come. As the event evolves, I think the information on that is actually in the recording for after the event. So in the resolution, that will all be addressed, and I think everybody should walk away from this really having an idea of the Phyrix world and the space that we're in, and what the future holds for that. I'm really excited.
And hopefully want to continue to take part in it.
Absolutely. That's the biggest thing is, this is an opportunity for us. We knew that going in. I think very early, once we started putting in the hours, Phyrix kind of changed from, oh, let's just do Adepticon for David. And then it was like, well, we kind of had the ball rolling. And if this goes well, let's see what the future holds. And I know there will be, without a doubt, there will be future Phyrix events, regardless of size or scope or whatever. Even if it's just the people that knew David and rallied around his story, hanging out for a weekend, then that's what it is, right? But I know we have high hopes that we bring new people in and can show them, the kind of fun you can have, even at a large scale, because I think that's what really separates us from a lot of other things going on, is that, we're pushing narrative on 50 tables or 25, or I'm sorry, not 50, it's 26, 25 tables. But still, you're pushing heavy narrative gameplay on 25 tables, plus the Mega ZM, right? Plus whatever we add in the future. So it's not I think a lot of people's experience with heavy narrative gameplay is, in the 5 to 7 local group only, play once a month group, those kind of groups. And to be able to meet up, and Phyrix is set up perfectly for you to be able to meet at these events, and hey, the story's still going from the last time we played, and your army is still the same, and your Praetor came along or Meltaman came along or whatever. But I think that's what makes it really cool, man. But I think with that, if you guys are okay with it, I think we should probably pause for a moment, and we're actually going to throw up the audios here for those who haven't heard them. These are the narrative audios that queue up the Outer Reaches campaign at Adepticon. And we'll be back with you in just a minute.
The Phyrix Cluster. The unexplored cluster of star systems, which would later come to bear the name Phyrix in Imperial record, was discovered when an anti-pirate patrol hailed a small cargo vessel with no logged destination or manifest data. When the smuggler's ship was confronted by the Imperium's warships, the captain decided to flee into the warp. He hoped that without the proper preparations, the Imperial vessels could not follow. Luck was not on his side, however, as the Dauntless class Nihontu immediately powered its warp drive in pursuit. The unplanned jump put an immense load on the ship's navigator, not only with the strain of sailing the Sea of Souls, but also tracking the small smuggler's vessel. The fugitives broke warp after a very short time, and powered subspace thrusters to maximum in an attempt to escape. But the Imperial vessel was close behind. Upon translation, the Nihontu's cogitators began picking up readings from the surrounding system, and the hollow displays and command consoles began to fill with data. The crew cross-referenced the information they were getting from the sensorium against known star systems in the Imperial Register with no matches. As the Nihontu closed on its prey, the astropaths began relaying this data back to the patrol. The message came through very faint, but it was clear that it carried a warning of the uncharted nature of the system. The last telepathic communication included the navigational information for the warp exit point, and a final word: Phyrix. This communication would be the last message ever received from the Nihontu, and was relayed with priority to Sector Command at Galaspar. Upon further review, metallurgic readings and unidentified trace element quantities hinted this uncharted system was vast, and held remnants of a potentially advanced civilization. The data was logged and forgotten, until the wars of the Horus Heresy ravaged the galaxy. Both sides, desperate for the resources that would allow them to gain the upper hand, discovered this long-forgotten report. They gathered what forces they could, and made haste to the Phyrix cluster. The road to the Outer Reaches. The steps of perdition. The first planetary body targeted by forces loyal to both the Emperor and the War Master was a small irradiated planetoid. Of little importance itself, the treasurer of perdition lay on its moons, Proteus and Yemeni. The Imperial forces were primarily committed to Yemeni, focused on securing the data processing hubs and archaeotech facilities that speckled the far side. They were hoping that in these ruins would lie information that might reveal the secrets of the system they were now engaged over. Traitor forces, having arrived slightly ahead, were initially deployed between both moons. With the Loyalists almost completely committed to Yemeni, the traitors withdrew from the moon and consolidated their legionaries on Proteus. In doing so, securing a massive communications relay and several mining and ore processing facilities on the moon. These would prove to be important resources in establishing control of the entry point to the cluster. And it was from these moons that the legions would launch their next assault deeper into the system. The Hadrian Incursion. Hadrian, the site of the first all-out engagements between loyalists and traitors, was a long-abandoned tech world, with manufactorum, mineral processing plants, and ancient hive cities nearly completely encrusting the planet in man-made industrial systems. With fleets engaged in orbit, drop pods fell to the surface, trying to secure critical infrastructure for each side. As more troops flooded the battlefield, the engagement zones moved over the world in a terrible tidal ebb and flow. Tactics would evolve as the planet was engulfed, and before long it became clear that both sides would rather see the entire planet razed than let its resources fall into enemy hands. With tactical opportunities dwindling, weapons of old night were unleashed, which absolutely ravaged the surface. Many of the structures were reduced to twisted, smouldering rubble from the intensity of the fighting on the surface. Any possible resources Hadrian held had been systematically targeted, fought for, and then destroyed. In the end, Hadrian was burned. The Outer Reaches. On the extreme edge of the system exists a minor rocky planetoid on a nearly imperceptible orbit around its distant star. Initially, neither side committed any assets to investigate it, deeming its location undesirable from a strategic perspective. Its lack of a meaningful orbit meant that this was likely a rogue asteroid that had naturally shifted to the very edge of the gravity well of the star. It wasn't until all scans of priority level Delta and above had been completed that the fleet augurs turned their eyes and ears to Nazar. What was expected to have been a normal geological report of various common minerals in outer edge asteroids instead showed unidentified materials, a gravimetric density higher than any other planet in the system, and a previously undetected megastructure in orbit. As the other war zones established themselves elsewhere, Outriders were dispatched to investigate this further. The planetoid maintained a barely perceptible atmosphere. The upper portion contained elevated levels of iodine, lending a pale violet appearance to the small orb. The surface of the tidally locked rock appeared mostly barren, with a concentration of processing facilities, potential space stocks, and habitation sections on the star-facing side. A single massive spire jutted from the center of the district, its mass and scale dwarfing everything around it. Scans for complex hydrocarbons returned negligible. What had occupied these structures was long gone, although it was clear that this had once been a hub of interstellar activity. Stationed above the main complex cluster in a geosynchronous orbit was a large solitary space station. Numerous solar arrays stretched out in long tendrils in every direction, their panels reflecting the faint yellow glow of the system star. The planet-facing side of this installation sported a vast collection of augury arrays and vox masts reaching for the planet like outstretched arms. Emplaced guns encircled the array. Their ancient barrels hung dormant in their mounts. Like the planet, there was no discernible power readings. The station simply appeared desolate, its purpose and mission lost to time. The Loyalist forces were the first to send their reports back to the main fleet on Hadrian. There the fighting was approaching a fever-pitched climax. Legion commanders deemed the potential of securing a new foothold on the next logical target more valuable than fighting over the dead husk of Hadrian, so a general withdrawal began. With the troops and resources aboard, the fleets maneuvered to disengage from the system. Each ship's sublight engines glowed white as they applied the maximum acceleration away from Hadrian. The traitor legions instead chose not to pursue immediately, but rather held back to ensure that they seized absolute control of what little was left. Pockets of abandoned Loyalist forces were flushed out and eliminated, and within hours the planet was solely in their control. Some traitor forces would be left behind on Hadrian to defend and support the new Mechanicum crews scouring the wreckage for anything else. The remainder of the traitor host would shortly depart Hadrian in pursuit of the Loyalist ships to the system's edge. There they would find whatever unknown objective had been so important for the Loyalists to abandon the previous engagement. Loyalist forces redirected from Hadrian eventually arrived at the objective designated as Station Upsilon. With practiced efficiency, a system invasion of the planet and orbital station was executed. Loyalist footholds on the outer edge of the planet's abandoned industrial zones were in place within hours. There they linked up with the various rapid deployment and scouting forces already planet-side. It wasn't long before the traitor legions crashed into the system like a wave upon a rocky shore. Plasma drives erupted in massive white-hot jets as the ships attempted to recover from the severe entry angle. A rain of stormbirds, drop pods, and close support vessels fell from the traitor fleet ships as they approached with reckless abandon. As planetfall occurred, the fight for Nazar was at hand.
All right, guys, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed those narrative contributions from Voldemort's Guide to Warhammer. Very honored again, like we said earlier, very honored to have him reading our stories and lending his voices and talents to a couple friends trying to have some fun. But with that said, I guess, Lucas, let's officially sort of go over Adepticon and talk about what events we're doing, what they look like, what the turnout's looking to be like, that kind of stuff.
Sure. So we have 5 linked but separate events at Adepticon. So we have the 3-day main narrative. We are playing 3,000 point, what is traditionally called frontline games. That really just means 3,000 point regular Horus Heresy games, without like Zone Mortalis or Centurion or Decurion or any kind of weird stuff. It's basically just everything that the game allows to be played can be played in frontline. So we have a Thursday, Friday, Saturday blocks of those. The tickets were actually available individually, so you could sign up for 1, 2, or 3 days if you were able to. And then we have what's called that's called Phyrix, the Outer Reaches, and then we have what's called Phyrix Station Upsilon, and Station Upsilon is a mega battle ZM.
Right.
Or big team battle, sometimes I refer to it as. So that's 16 players, 2,000 points per player, 2 sides, and on an 18-foot long Zone Mortalis board.
Yeah, and the narrative events sort of serve.
That's been kind of a staple of Phyrix, so
Yeah,
we wanted to bring that back.
And the narrative events sort of serve as like the major like backbone of what Phyrix is, right? I feel like if you play on the narrative tables, you're going to get a good feel for what Phyrix is. The Mega ZM is kind of our crown jewel of Phyrix. It's been around since the first Phyrix event. Well, I think it was a mega battle, the first one, but
yeah, I think we decided.
I think it was like the second or third.
One time.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember the first time
the question was like, well, do you guys want to do a mega battle?
Right.
Okay, go on.
I was gonna say, I can't remember which event it was, but I remember that like it was day 2 or 3, and a lot of us had fun with the standard missions and everything, but we were like, man, let's do a mega battle. Let's have some fun. And David was like, okay, like, what do you guys want to do? And he and a couple of us got to talking, and we were just like, well, you got all this awesome ZM terrain that you haven't gotten to use yet. And we took like what Lucas, you were there with us, weren't you? Like, I'm pretty sure it was
Yeah.
me and David, and like in 30 minutes we set up. I can't remember how long a table, but I still have all the pictures from it. It was amazing, and it was really amazing how popular that was.
Yep. So we've decided.
I think that one was 12 feet.
Yeah, and I remember we allowed like
2
whole
6x4s.
vehicles. Yeah, like we allowed, like there were a couple of indicators rolling through the halls and all sorts of craziness.
I was just spamming jetpacks on my assault marines. It was pretty funny. All those dangerous terrain checks indoors.
Oh yeah.
But so we decided to bring the Mega ZM. We were lucky enough to be signed up for it already, but we decided to bring it in. Right. So and we've sold out. Right. We sold out almost immediately.
Yeah, so that's basically what had happened. Was the tickets went for sale. At first, for the frontline games, we had 32 spots, and then we had 1 day of Station Upsilon available for 16 spots, and we sold out almost instantly. I won't go too deep into it. The cart system for Adepticon and the checkout is always kind of a shit show. A lot of people were upset about that, and that's out of our hands.
Yeah.
It sucks, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Everybody has to do it, right?
So, right, exactly. So we had expected quite a bit of demand. You know, historically the Adepticon Horus Heresy events sell out quickly every time, but we had no idea the actual demand that we had. We probably should have. We wanted to be optimistic, but we didn't think it was going to be this. Like, we didn't think it was going to be this in demand. And so we expanded the regular games.
Oh yeah, and you had done double or you had expanded it from what they had done the year before when you did the first run of tickets.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, and
then,
I think
a little bit. I think he had only done 12 the year before, and then they actually had a regular Zone Mortalis event the year before, and we did not do that. We decided to do the Mega Battle instead. But the player count, I think, is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so we had a little bit more than they had the year before, but
yeah. So we've expanded the tickets out, right? And then those sold it. Obviously, waitlist filled it immediately.
Yeah, the waitlist immediately filled. We increased the amount of tickets we had available by 50%. So we went to 24 tables, which is 48 players on the front line, and then we opened a second day of Station Upsilon.
Right, and just to clarify,
effectively doubled the amount of players.
Yeah, and just to clarify, that's 48 players per narrative event, and there's 3 days of narrative
per day.
Yeah, so you have
So the numbers have come back, and we have 103 unique participants signed up. We had 178 total tickets available, and we have 103 unique players signed up. So some people got lucky or whatever and got signed up for all 3 days, as well as some Station Upsilon. But the vast majority of people aren't signed up for every single day, which I feel is a little unfortunate. I wish it wouldn't. I wish it's not like that. I wish everyone who wanted to sign up for all 3 days could get the full experience. I'm glad that more people get to experience it.
I'm really hoping, man. That's on my notes already for next year. If when we reload this for next year, I hope that we can get a package for 1 ticket for all 3 days, and just even if we reserve the seats at the normal narrative tables and then backfill those later for packages we don't sell, but I just feel like so many people, a lot of the feedback I've been getting is,
if we're being candid, they've sold what's called tracks in the past.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like a set of events that you buy a ticket for together, but you can also buy the tickets separately.
Yeah.
Right.
They've sold that in the past. We were told that was not an option. And then the minute we log in, the very first thing you can even buy is a track for some other game.
Right.
We were like, we would have liked to have sold that.
Yeah.
But they told us that wasn't available for our game. So I don't know whether that was a miscommunication with them.
That's the
But
first. That is,
that was just an unfortunate thing. But we definitely do want to do tracks
yeah,
in the future.
and that
Oh
is
yeah,
like I said,
because
it's literally at the
because
top of my list for sure.
oh yeah, because
Yeah.
the we we have a lot of people who are previous Phyrix members, and we're looking forward to them getting in. And I think the 3-day track would be. It is a shame that wasn't available because
Yep.
we already went over that. But
Still, I tell you what, dudes, 103 unique players that's way more people than I know personally who play Warhammer. So,
also,
so
It's very cool.
we're gonna be
And I was
making
gonna
a
say,
lot of
that doesn't
friends. I
even
feel
really
like,
give you the whole picture.
right?
I hope so. That's my goal.
Yeah, because
That
we're only half
doesn't
the
even give you the
hall,
whole picture.
right?
yeah, because we still have the
Not
waiting
even
list.
quite half.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We still have the wait list, but we're not even quite half of the number of tables.
Mhm.
We're like, 48% of the tables available.
Yeah.
So there's actually 203 unique participants signed up in all of the Horus Heresy
That's
events.
so insane.
Over 200 players are
Dude,
playing Horus Heresy on this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's official.
Now,
that
some people might only be playing in one day or whatever, but
Yeah.
that does not include Adeptus Titanicus or Aeronautica Imperialis,
Yeah.
which are being ran by Greying Legion,
That's crazy.
that are set in the Horus Heresy. That doesn't even include. I'm not talking about
Yeah.
those. They have their own players too.
I think that just speaks to the passion that people have around, the 2.0 relaunch and how successful that's been. I know I've seen it successful, even at my local level, like 1.0, me and Judd and a couple of friends. There's a small Kansas City scene, but it's not 35 people, Now you run into people
Right.
at the game store just randomly playing, 1,000-point starter games or whatever they make out of the box, right? Or whatever they've got together. So I think we can probably, after Adepticon's over, we can officially say that North American Horus Heresy is alive and doing very, very well, right? Because it's gonna feel so good to be in that
It
ballroom
definitely had
again.
a rough patch.
Yeah, to be in that ballroom again though, with everybody full elbow to elbow, having a great time. I'm looking forward to it completely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I guess Lucas, what I know we were sort of very tentatively talking about post Adepticon plans, right? Because as excited as we are for Adepticon, we have to keep our eye on the horizon as far as where we want to take this, right? So, do you want to let them know about what we're sort of tentatively talking about now for events in the future?
Yeah, we're hoping to do another spring event. Like at the end of spring. I don't want to nail it down yet. We're not quite ready to announce it, but we're hoping for something, like I said, like late spring, and then summer. I'm sorry, late spring in Kansas City, summer in Dallas, and fall in Kansas City. Well, we haven't really nailed down fall yet.
Yeah,
that's really pretty far in the future. But
it is.
Watch this space. We're definitely going to be talking about it.
Yeah, and our summer,
there's definitely, like I said, there's definitely going to be Phyrix going forward.
And our summer and fall events, right? Those are going to be. We really want those to be standalone Phyrix events, right? We're not trying to tag along to anybody. This is going to be a weekend full of Heresy players playing Heresy games, and just we're trying to keep it really focused, right? And I know the spring event.
Yeah, that's the goal for summer.
Yeah, and for the spring event, we literally just started that conversation last week, so that's still very much in the infancy. We're not trying to be vague, to keep the mystery up. It's literally that it is entirely too early to give any details about it.
Yet.
Right.
Yeah, we'll definitely be letting you guys know as soon as we know anything.
That's awesome. All right, guys. So
right. We know that in order for people to make travel plans, they got to be able to, we got to get it up pretty soon. So we're hoping in the next couple weeks we'll be able to formally announce that.
I think post Adepticon we will definitely have info. So I guess let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked about Phyrix. We've talked about what we're doing at Adepticon. Yeah, what's up?
One thing I wanted to touch on while we're talking about Adepticon and what all we're doing there. we talked about David, and David left behind his fiance. Her name is Hannah, and I just wanted to let everyone know we will be doing a raffle. We're going to be raffling off some fully painted Horus Heresy armies.
Right.
I'm ready to finally come out, cats out of the bag, and say what we're giving away. Like legit, more than a full size, fully painted Horus Heresy army. I believe we're going to have 2 of them to give away. So we're going to be doing raffles for those, and all of the proceeds are going to be going to David's family, Hannah.
Yeah, and that's
to
actually
help her out.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought it up because it's not just the raffle, right? Every shirt purchase for the event,
We have a lot of
everything that's going
That's
at
a good
Adepticon,
point.
any money transaction between the people that are playing and us, portions of that or all of that in some cases is going to Hannah's benefit, right?
Yes. We're not like we have some costs that need to be covered, but after we've covered some of our biggest costs, all the proceeds are going to go to her. Once we're talking about merchandise sales here.
Absolutely.
We have some. We can go ahead and talk about it. We have stickers, we have banners, we have some card packs. We're actually going to go over the cards in just a minute.
Yeah.
You'll be able to purchase those cards. Unfortunately, I don't have a stock of the cards ready to go. They'll have to be ordered.
Yeah.
But we have all that worked out.
Yeah, we've been really hard.
So we have quite a bit of merchandise, and we already have a shirt store.
Yeah, we do have a shirt store. The links will be in the descriptions or in whatever appends this podcast. One of the things I'm really happy about personally, Lucas, is that, Hannah was a major contributor on the t-shirt art for this event, right? Traditionally, we've hired an outside artist, and
she's the credited artist.
Yeah, and so traditionally we've worked with Kurt Metz and some others, but it just felt right. We had an idea for what we wanted. She was up to it, and I think it adds a little bit more to that. That this is yes, it's about heresy, but it's also about supporting someone who was very key to everybody's heresy experience, right? At least everybody that was.
Yeah, I don't want to harp on it. Right, I don't want to harp on it too much, but I'm just going to say this: that David could not have started this and continued this and moved it to this caliber without her support.
Absolutely.
And she's helped support us as well.
Absolutely.
Like, she's not just gone now. She's actually going to be there at the event.
Yeah.
She's going to be helping us out. So we want to keep her involved. It feels right. And she's frankly good at it.
No, she is really good. She's been awesome for everything we've asked of her, for sure. That's good. Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
So
yeah,
keeping her around.
Yeah, and so the links for all that, like I said, will be in below or whatever appends this, and we will have order forms or online order forms available at Adepticon for anything that you might want to purchase. I got an
online thing.
Yeah, and so I guess now we will segue into so when we were talking about our Adepticon events, right, we have our tables and we have our narrative, we have our ZM, and we'll talk some more about the tables and how they work in a later section. But right now, Lucas, I really want to focus on the NPC and the Archaeotech systems because I feel like these are fairly unique to most people. I don't think most people are going to have seen this, right?
Right. I think the only place they've really been run, they did run them at Adepticon last year. They ran like a little bit more of a beta version. We've polished it a little bit, from feedback. And then we obviously had to update it all for 2.0. Not all that stuff carried directly over. You have to add movement values and modify special rules and all that stuff for the new system, as well as add quite a bit on top of it. But basically what it is we call it the points of interest system, right? So what it is on each table, you're going to have these little tokens, and they're like a 40 millimeter base size token. And when your infantry or cavalry units come into base-to-base contact with these tokens, they can basically look for items that have been left behind in Phyrix. there's basically two options. There's either items that have been left there, or there's like outriders and scouting forces and other things from the fleets that have come there and kind of paved the way for the Legion invasion of Nazar.
Yeah, so
So
you'll introduce, or you'll run into this thing.
you'll be able to pick.
You'll get a choice, right? You'll get a choice between, do I want to go down the NPC
Yes.
tree, or do I want to go down the architect tree? So let's start with the NPC tree. I'm going to pull up a preview of it actually to share with everybody here. So why don't you sort of give a high level view of what the NPC system is in its own?
So basically, when you activate a point of interest system, you can pick either you want to do an architect or NPC. If you pick NPC, there are 4 factions that an NPC can possibly be a part of. An NPC can either be a loyalist, a traitor, they can be neutral, or they can be hostile. So if you were playing, say, loyalist Imperial Fist, and your Phalanx Warder guy, stumbles over this little marker, and you're like, okay, I want an NPC. Let's see what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to draw one. And if you draw one that has the loyalist allegiance, they would immediately join your army.
Right.
And if you draw one that has the hostile allegiance or the traitor allegiance, they would immediately join the opponent's army. Now, don't get too scared of it. There's many more neutral NPCs than there are the hostile or the opponent's ones.
Yeah.
So you're much more likely to draw one that joins your army, but you could encounter an enemy.
Yeah.
Also remember, your opponent could draw one and add one to your army.
Exactly.
So it kind of works both ways. So
yeah, and those adverse effects we designed them to be minimal, right? Like even though the actual models might impact the table differently, we didn't want it to overrun the table, right? Because we didn't want everybody to run away from the NPC system. The idea is that, generally speaking, most of what you choose out of this deck is going to be good. There are a couple gotcha moments just to make it fun and interesting, right?
Right.
Yeah. All right. So
we got the example. Remember that when you encounter an NPC, it's going to be in your turn.
Mm-hmm.
So if it spawns an opponent, you'll be able to interact with them kind of before they can really like interact with you. So it's not too bad, I don't think.
Yeah.
And so we've put up an NPC on the screen here, right?
Yep.
You got one up?
Yeah, it's the Questoris Envoy. I'm actually showing the model from our library that so when people choose this, so when they walk up to the desk and they say, hey, I want to pick my NPC, and they draw their card, if this is the card you drew, you will actually get this model to take back to the table, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
We do have a checkout system, so you will have to give your some information just so we can make sure we get all the models back at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But this model will effectively join your army until he dies. So even if it's like, you can carry it into the next game and even into the next day if you're signed up for it.
Right.
We have a system for keeping track of all of that and everything. So this model is pretty cool. He's basically like a envoy from a night house.
Yeah.
That's kind of gotten lost, I guess. A lot of these guys have accidentally gotten lost and are just wandering around the battlefield.
Drank a little.
Yeah.
So he's pretty cool. He has some he drank a little, what is it called? Amasec?
Yeah, a little bit too much Amasec and like woke up on the battlefield.
Yeah. Yep.
So he's pretty cool. He's a little bit of a duelist character. He has a shield and a sword, and he can either put the shield away and use the sword two-handed, or he can use it with the shield and kind of get a defensive buff. So
yeah,
he's pretty cool.
And
the models from Australis Ultima tagged events. That's where the model's from.
Yeah, and one of the things I really appreciate about this,
or a fan created model,
especially for people that would be new to Horus Heresy, right, is that all the rules that are needed to run this character are on this card, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There is some very generic war gear we have not included on the card. This guy doesn't have any of it, but like some of the characters have like a refractor field. We have not printed the rules for the refractor field on the card because they're in the regular book, and pretty much everybody knows what that is already.
Yeah. Everybody should have encountered it, most likely. Yeah, so we tried to minimize the amount of...
It's nothing crazy, but if they have some...
Go ahead.
if they have some kind of bespoke weapon or whatever, they're going to have it printed on the card.
Yeah.
If they have a special rule that is not present in the, is not common even, they have it printed on their card. The cards are actually gigantic.
They are gigantic.
Frankly,
so we don't
cards
lose them.
Huge.
It will be hard for people to accidentally walk away with them, right? But on the other side,
the card's like half the sheet of paper.
Hey, we can give you really vague, oddball stuff that you've never seen before and probably never played with, and give you all the rules on this one card. You don't have to bring your book out. The gameplay just resumes where it left off, and we think it's a pretty fun way to play Heresy, especially for all the different, interactions you're going to get with stuff that you would never choose or have access to in some cases, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's sort of the NPC system in a
nutshell. So
nutshell.
there are 40 NPCs to pick from.
Yeah, there's 40 of them.
Just to give an example, there's 40 to pick from.
Yeah. So it should give us a lot of diversity on the table. I don't think we should run into duplicates, getting sent out, but we'll deal with that as we have to deal with it. But I guess with that sort of explained, let's talk about the other branch of the tree. So if you walk up to the, you run into the POI system, I don't know that I want to roll the dice on this, or I don't want to deal with another model. My other option is to choose the Archaeotech side. So what does the Archaeotech system entail?
So the Archaeotech is not all of them, but most of them are like single-use items. So they recharge at the beginning of every game. You equip them. There's rules for how you equip them to your models, and those are given in the player pack. And basically, like I said, a lot of them are one-use items. So they're very simple, very easy to resolve. It's not something that you're going to constantly be looking in the book for. So I don't want to say that the Archaeotech system is kind of like the easy way out, but if you're not confident about dealing with these like other models and stuff like that, the Archaeotech cards offer a very simple, elegant solution that you still can get a cool like one-time use bonus or whatever, but they're not like pages of, well, I guess the NPCs aren't really pages and pages of text, but they are a little bit simpler.
Right. And they really have sort of that feeling of the old relics of the old knight or whatever it was from first edition. Like,
yeah.
I really like that.
And some of them are directly lifted.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really fun, right? It adds a layer of detail to the world. Like, these are the things that we picture exist in the Phyrix system that could just be randomly on a field. So, like, we've got an example up of the Apex digital weapon. Like I said, it's a once per game kind of thing. It does its thing and it goes away, or it stashes in your pocket, and you carry it around, right? But we even have rules for dropping it. Isn't that right?
Yes. If your character, your guy is killed, basically when you equip it, there's a hierarchy of equipping it. So if you have an independent character, they have to equip it and so on. And if all of the eligible models are killed, you drop it and you take the card itself and just put it face down on the table like an objective marker.
Boom.
And the next time a model, could be yours, could be your opponent's, comes and they can grab it and then they'll be able to equip it.
Oh yeah. You talk about
I can see this turning into a football game of get the awesome artifact.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if it's like the spatial teleporters or whatever that one was where you can just go through terrain. I think to drop that while you're positioning yourself, you know what I mean, and just give it to your enemy and it would. I think it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be really fun. So I think we definitely didn't really want to get lost in the details of a ton of examples and everything, but I think the overarching idea of the concepts are there. Of course, this will all be in the player pack. It'll be in our morning discussions every morning. The people walking around the event will be able to answer any questions you have about it. It's not meant to be more important than the game that you're playing on the table. It's just supposed to make it more interesting and build more world. And
correct.
And you never know when some of these NPCs or some of these items you're picking up, they might find them ways into the narrative in the future, and you will have had that at some point, right? I think it just opens up a little bit more opportunities for us to make something that is truly unique, right? So I guess with that sort of summarized, if you guys are okay with it, I'd like to kind of move or shift into talking about the tables for Phyrix, because
Oh
I
yeah,
think
the highlight of playing in an Phyrix event.
yeah, I think we all talk about it a lot. At least anybody that's introduced or met me through Heresy. David was had a very high level understanding of what he wanted for tables. I've grown to love that, insist on it in my own games, and I think we should maybe just give a preview of what what people can expect to see as far as tables go at Adepticon, because it's not just going to be your 40k competitive 2 L brackets and a cross and some ruins, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lucas.
No, to be fair, that's not something you normally see in Horus Heresy. This is kind of what's been, what we kind of expect. But we do try to keep the standard fairly high. We want to put the bar up here and
Absolutely.
hit it every time.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, so I would say I would start off by saying that our tables are generally fairly heavily terrained, right? I would say
they're fairly dense.
Yeah, we fall on the heavy side of terrain. I
Very
will say,
vertical.
David always had this idea, and I think it's important to explain it up front, is he always had this idea that the tables should kind of lend themselves to two things. One, the mission, right? We always have bespoke missions for the tables of terrain that we have, right? It's not like we're randomly picking one out of the book. It's been perfectly picked for the terrain that's on the table and how we expect it to play. And then two is that we really want to give the opportunity for individual units to shine, right? Like you bring an all-rounders list to a Phyrix event, and your tactical squad's going to be able to do something cool. There's going to be a place for close combat to fight and not get shot by the tanks. There's going to be roads for the tanks to hold control of and deny access to other units. And even in 1.0, not so much in 2.0, but in 1.0 there was even verticality, like a lot of vertical. Well, we always have verticality in our tables, but in 1.0 it served a lot more as anti-air kind of placement kind of situations, so you could take care of all those flyers buzzing around in 1.0. So the tables tend to be, like I said, are designed around just letting you not have to worry about, okay, the objective's in the middle of the table, let's go fight while our tanks shoot each other. Like, I feel like it's not something that's unique to Phyrix, but I definitely feel like Phyrix really leans into it, right?
Oh yeah,
it's something we're constantly thinking about. Yeah, when we're planning tables and we're like bringing the terrain and setting it up, it's something we're thinking about is, how to set it up, not only so that it makes sense and tries to tell a story, but also for gameplay as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
think, go ahead.
The best, definitely an all-rounder list is going to help you quite a bit. There's going to, like you said, there's going to be stuff for your jump troops to do. There's going to be stuff for your dudes and rhinos to do. There's going to be stuff for your big tanks to do. So that's kind of we've always tried to keep that in mind as best we can.
Yeah, and I think that's what's fun is that I think because the tables are this way, right, it allows us to comfortably walk into Adepticon and say, yeah, we're not going to restrict lists. Like, bring whatever you want to bring, because you can bring
some of those control points may be on the top of an area that your contemptor leader's not going to be able to get up to and score on, or
but we don't
whatever.
Yeah, but at the same time, we don't build to deny lists, right? Like, you're just going to have to be smart. Like, if you're standing in line to choose your table, and like, if you think about yourself as the general, right, and you're trying to determine, okay, I'm going to go put my unit here. This is where my unit will be most successful at fighting. Okay, then you've thought about it, right? But if you just walk up to a table, yeah, you might find that, hey, my armored battalion can't fit in the deployment zone, or or I can't
Yeah, it
get to
may be
anything.
an uphill battle.
Yeah, and I think, but that's what I think is so fun, though, because on the flip
Oh,
side of that, I
oh
play
yeah,
an.
and that's.
Go ahead, Judd.
Oh, I was going to say, and that's why we're doing sort of the choose your table esque, matchmaking for Adepticon, is so that people, I'm not saying you're not going to get stuck on a table that's going to give you some problems, but if as Eric said, if you're willing to talk to your opponent and figure out what you want to do ahead of time, you're going to have a good time.
Absolutely.
And that's 100% what we're about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, that's what makes the game fun. I can speak personally here. I play 100% jump pack Blood Angels, all infantry, and some of these tables I struggle at because they're not designed. They're not designed for jump pack wearing guys to be buzzing around doing stuff. But some of my favorite games are on those tables, right? Because, oh man, I did that against that, like in this weird circumstance where I had to roll to not die from hitting the wall, and,
Yep.
So I think even when the tables are slightly against you from a layout perspective, against your army composition, there's still viable ways to win the game. Like that's why we
Absolutely.
we design the missions per table, right? I think the other thing that's really cool about bespoke missions per table is that it allows us to do asymmetrical kind of stuff, right? Like we don't have a ton of it in the rotation right now, but I know in the past we've had completely, hey, you're attacking, you're defending, and the defenders have all the bonuses here. You might not make it, but if you can get one guy up the hill, you won, right? Like you're, or it's very like if you can get to a position where you can score, your scoring will offset his multiple rounds of benefits, right? And I think that's only doable through the system.
Right. We have I'd probably say about a third of the missions we're running have attacker defender dynamic. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, when I say attacker defender, that doesn't really mean that one player is attacker, one player is defender. Really, the attacker defender mechanic that we've introduced allows one player to be doing one thing and one player to be doing another thing. And then that way you can easily reference, like, oh, the attacker is trying to do this and the defender is trying to do that. But it doesn't mean the attacker has to rush at a wall held by the defender.
Right.
That's not really what it means.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
It just means they're trying to do something different.
Exactly.
And there's some really, really cool mechanics I think you guys are going to really enjoy, like our bespoke missions. Lucas and I just went through and edited and checked everything to make sure that everything looked good. And I'm after seeing the missions, I'm super psyched for running them because I can't wait to see how players interact with some of the features.
Absolutely. I think I'll be interested to poll people or talk to people in Discord after Adepticon and really see what they thought, because I know I speak from my own experience that by like the players that I've met through Heresy locally, some of them at least, I think they would be really intrigued by what Phyrix offers, right? And we're lucky enough to be in a position where a lot of this stuff was, already there, skeletons wise or whatever. And we've, I think we put together an interesting attempt to push the narrative, But with the main narrative tables out of the way, let's talk about the Mega ZM, because it's my favorite part of Adepticon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could just disappear all day into the halls of the Zone Mortalis, but Lucas, why don't you, or actually let's let Judd run this one down. Judd, why don't you run us down sort of, I know we talked about it earlier about what the Mega ZM, it's, big table, lots of ZM terrain, but why don't you give us an overview?
So for the Mega ZM, for the Mega ZM. We've been sort of evolving it, especially with the release of 2.0's ZM rules. We had to take a look at those and see if they would work for the current edition. We decided that some of them do, some of them don't. We don't have quite as many restrictions. Our game sizes are going to be a little bit larger, but the cool thing about this is going to be an 18-foot by 4-foot table that this mega battle is going to be fighting on. And one of the really cool features of this is going to be the deployment. 4 players are going to get to, is it 4 or 3? 4. Sorry.
It's 3 per side.
Yeah, 3 per side, 6 total. But so you're going to have 3 of your players are going to be able to teleport. One's going to be able to teleport, one's going to be able to outflank, and one's going to be infiltrate. And this will allow you guys to move around the field and really affect the battle in your army's favor. And in this Zone Mortalis, there are going to be some points, some capture points that you're going to need to take and hold to give benefits in following games, like the next day.
Yeah.
But then we also have a couple of rooms that are going to be that affect the table. Like my favorite one, the one these guys have seen me painting up for, is the power substation. And with the power substation, you're going to be able to grab that thing, and you're going to be able to mess with your enemies by turning the lights off in certain rooms.
Yeah.
Dropping them into pitch darkness, so suddenly they're under those night fighting rules, and they're like, "Hey, I don't like the dark."
Night fighting in ZM definitely has a different feel.
Oh yeah, it's going to be wonderfully brutal, and that's what I'm really hoping, is that like this is going to be an absolute bloodbath between the loyalists and traitors. And our past events with the mega battles on the ZM have been really great, and I think we're going to continue that tradition. I know going forward we're going to be looking at some more mechanics, but that's for another discussion another day.
I'm really excited that we decided to evolve the deployment for this event, right? Like,
oh yeah, I really think allowing 3 players to come in via different methods is going to really make a huge difference, and it's going to allow that close quarters combat, like almost
early.
Just first turn. I foresee that there's going to be some people. I foresee blood in the halls and just carnage everywhere. I can't wait.
Yeah. I think it's going to also.
There is one other mechanic I want to talk about.
Yeah. Go right ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The only other thing I wanted to say too is that the other mechanic for the deployment that we've implemented is a deployment coherency. So you have to deploy your models somewhat close together. It's not like they got to be right on top of each other, but you can't have 2 units 20 feet away from each other. And that's just to kind of keep the game flowing.
Right.
So it's really going to be like, your strike force is going to be coherent.
Yeah.
I think that was initially one of those things that we overlooked in the first pass when we started writing all this out, right? And then I think the first discussion we had was, okay, I'm going to take my Blood Angels and I'm going to infiltrate them. I'm going to be in close combat first turn on the entire length of the board. There's just going to be a line of chainsaws just ready. And it was like, no, we can't do that. That's part of the balancing that has to come with, giving people interesting ways to play. I do think personally it makes you feel more like you're zooming in on the middle of a boarding action. By having all these different deployments, because it's coming from anywhere. Because in some cases, like the outflank, for example, I don't want to get too lost in the rules on this, but there are rules that allow you to not determine it pre-game, so you're allowed to move it, right?
Basically, it uses the same kind of flanking assault style dynamic like the regular flanking assault, but you're able to move the marker. Basically, you choose, do you want to deploy your men or do you want to move the marker?
Yeah. And I tell you...
So if you're comfortable with where the marker is, you can bring the guys on. And if it's not a good spot for you, you can move the marker and deploy later.
Yeah, I think that's going to add so much depth to the gameplay.
Oh yeah,
personally.
and that gives you the chance to not be forced to deploy into the guns of waiting enemy gun line. And you know,
Or
Lucas really did an awesome job on these rules, and I
Mhm.
think they're going to be. I think people are going to have a lot of fun with them.
Yeah. And while we're on the
it
top,
also prevents the mechanic of them blocking your marker, where they
Right.
can't, like, you know, if they want to spend their entire army to block the whole line where you can't
Yeah.
ever come in. It's not the best game mechanic, but you have won effectively by making them spend all these resources tied up at the back of the board
Yeah.
to not let you deploy your guy.
Yeah, I think-
And then you go and capture the power station and turn the lights off on them and murder them in the dark.
There you
That's
go.
the way to do it.
That
Yeah.
is the way. Yeah, and you know, while we're on the topic of the Megazeum, I think it's important to acknowledge we have a very long-term sponsor for for Phyrix, right, with Death Ray Designs and
Amazing
the ZM
stuff.
table that we actually play on. And it's been iterated on every Phyrix event. It's getting longer and longer and longer. This is all provided to us via Death Ray Designs, right, Lucas? And I don't know. I just can't hype them up enough. I love their terrain. I think it's one of the best modular sets out there. It's easy to paint.
Oh yeah.
Easy to
Yes.
assemble. But it just looks awesome. And
They've been a long time sponsor.
Mhm.
Like,
And
I
he
think
has
they're
been an
probably
amazing
our
sponsor.
biggest supporter.
Yeah, and he does more than just ZM, right? He does regular terrain too, and I think some additional laser cut stuff. I think he's basically in the whole laser cutting scene. So, definitely, if you got a chance and you're looking for some cool ZM stuff, check out Death Ray Designs because.
And I am a definite fanboy of all of his stuff. So.
Yeah.
Exactly. They've just launched two things that are not quite. They're a little bit. They're not really heresy related. They have their own miniatures game now called Steel Rift. That's kind of I don't want to say BattleTech-esque, but like it's like a small scale BattleTech. It's like a 6mm BattleTech. Well, I guess I don't know what scale BattleTech is. Don't hang me, but
I play
it's
it
like
and I
it's
don't
almost.
know.
I think it's smaller scale BattleTech. I think it's like BattleTech, but the scale is smaller. So he makes a bunch of terrain for that. That looks really cool. That might work for Adeptus Titanicus. And then they just launched a line of custom transfers that are the quality on them is top notch.
That's awesome.
It's as good as the Forge World sheets. It's
That's
very
cool.
good. And the prices I think are pretty reasonable. They sell the sheets are not as big. You know, a Forge World sheet is like full size sheet of paper. Their sheets are like what is it, A3? It's like the little kind of note card size.
Yeah.
But I think they're only they're less than $10.
Honestly,
I think they're $5.
Yeah,
honestly,
sub $10.
And they make a bunch of stuff that would be useful for heresy, like
yeah,
they make a bunch of like chevrons and hazard stripes and all that stuff. It's very, like I said, the quality is top notch.
Yeah,
now we need to get him to do checkerboard just so that we can all have the awesome checkerboard.
I can honestly say that they're one of the few companies that I don't glance an eye at to buy stuff from. Like, you know, even having not seen it in person. Like with terrain, I feel like a lot of the times, especially now that we've been in the Adepticon like build mode, you know, sometimes you order stuff and it's not quite as grandiose as it looks, and you know, you're not disappointed because you have terrain, but your vision is kind of not, you know what I mean? You have to adjust.
Yeah, and then there's the opposite too, though. There's some hidden gems out there.
There
like
are.
The next thing we're going to talk about, or
later on,
one of the next things we're going to talk about that we recently found.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I agree with you that a lot of stuff you need to kind of see in person to kind of get a feel for it. And that's something we've hopefully allowed you guys to do because we've brought a bunch of different terrain from a bunch of different manufacturers. You can kind of see it, how it all interacts together. We have Games Workshop, we have Game at EU, we have Death Ray Designs, we have Mad Gaming, we have Prometheum Forge. We have a bunch of manufacturers.
A lot of stuff.
So, yeah, if you guys have any questions about any of the terrain, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll all be available.
About whose it is and all of that.
We'll all be available all Adepticon long to answer anything you've got. Now, one of the things, shifting back to the ZM game, one of the last things I wanted to touch on that, though, is the interactions from the table. Because Judd talked about how the capture points on the table themselves will affect, or some of them will affect the ZM game as it's going on, right?
Mhm.
But additionally, narratively speaking, the fight on Station Epsilon is occurring at the exact same time that the planet side engagement is occurring, right? And so, Lucas, we built a system in, or integrated Station Epsilon into the planet side invasion, right?
Yes. So, like he was saying, like there will be some of the objectives you can capture on the zone on the station that will allow you to interact with the frontline games. Narratively, they are happening at the same time, but realistically, they are not. We have a morning, basically like an afternoon and an evening. So they're not directly interacting with each other like in real time, but there is a mechanic that allows them to interact.
Yeah,
There's also we didn't talk about the battle zones, which are basically
Yeah.
how the frontline tables are going to interact with each other,
yeah, true.
and it's all basically part of the same system.
Yeah, basically we've included a way for Station Epsilon games to affect the planet side stuff going on, and the planet side stuff even to affect each other, right, from table to table,
Right.
or group to group. So there's a lot of extra interactions going on to help sort of, again, bring you into the world, bring you into the planet. This is not just a ZM fight and then a planet fight and then a ZM fight and a planet. Like we want it to feel like you know what you're winning. Like when you're winning a table and you're doing your thing, you can actually have an effect that you can see on somebody else's table.
Right.
That is to me one of the coolest interactions you can have in wargaming, is affecting something that isn't directly me or my opponent, right?
Yeah.
Right.
All
Because
right.
you're affecting the entire like battle as a whole.
Yeah.
Well, and
exactly.
I definitely think that helps to make all of the different games going on feel like it is an overarching battle instead of just a bunch of one-off like skirmishes.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, I think the last thing I wanted to talk about in the table terrain kind of section is we're going to debut the Nahantu table. This is the table that
Yes.
I've just completed this week, and it's basically designed to be the wreck of the Nahantu ship that was mentioned in the early narrative, right? So
Yes.
obviously this is mostly from a 3D printed set that was available. I've done a lot of work to get it all together. I've tried to build a mission that I feel like is going to be really fun to play. And at the same time, there's going to be an opportunity for me to sort of sneak a little bit of a narrative hook or an incentive to play on the table. You know, the main, not getting into it too deep, but the main objective here is to get to the computer of the Nahantu and sort of see what it saw when it came into the system. And maybe if you retrieve enough of that data, you might have a little bit of a leg up when it comes to everybody else, narratively speaking, at the event. I'm personally very, very excited to get people on this. I'm really proud of it. I think it's going to be amazing, right?
Yeah, you did an amazing job on that table, man.
Yeah.
It looks great.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I tried to think it through. I think it's gonna have some really awesome line of sight mechanics that are gonna make it really fun to play. And like I said, narratively to hook it in, this is sort of our, not that we have a headline table for the event, but if I had to pick one that's my favorite, I've got a new one for sure. But so that's the
Well, this
Nahantu.
is one of the ones that like is narratively created specifically for this purpose. A lot
Yeah.
of the other terrain that we have, while being pretty, I think it's pretty good, it wasn't created with this particular narrative in mind.
Right.
We've kind of used terrain that was previously available to try to tell a new story, but this is created for this specific narrative and you'll be able to explore it.
Yeah, I know as we were writing and proofreading stuff, and we kept going over the ship and the stuff, it seemed like a good opportunity to make an interesting table. We didn't have anything like this in our rotation yet, so we tackled it. I think we hit it out of the park, guys. And I think it's going to be cool to see how people play on it. Looking forward to you guys taking a look at it. And of course, if you don't get to deploy there because you need to deploy elsewhere for whatever reason, I just want to throw in a quick reminder that you can join or play on any of our tables after 5 o'clock every day at Adepticon, except for Saturday. But yeah, so if you don't,
still might have a little bit of open gaming on Saturday. But,
okay, yeah. So
yeah.
if you don't get to
we
deploy
have to
there
start
directly,
packing up on Saturday evening.
yeah. So if you don't get to deploy there directly, there will be opportunities for you to sneak on the table, and I could probably hang them. I'll definitely be around the hall then. So even if the narrative stuff isn't out there, I can whisper in your ear, let you know what's going on. So I'm looking forward to that, guys. And I guess with that, let's shift to the last thing we wanted to talk about, and that's the newest terrain sponsor that we got. Brutal Cities Terrain.
Amazing terrain.
Yeah.
And I have to say, an absolute joy to put together. Like, some MDF terrain is great looking. It's fantastic. But when you start putting it together, you maybe don't want to be alive anymore.
Yeah.
But this terrain was like, we cleared, what was it, 4 pieces of terrain? Well, technically even more than that. It was more like 6 or 7 kits in the space of 4 hours of work yesterday, fully assembled. And now all it needs is some paint thrown on it.
Yeah, and with this, it's like, it was like a sponsor kit that we got or coordinated with them for, and it's going to be definitely painted and available for Adepticon. I don't know that we'll get a full table concept and mission done, but I think tentatively we're trying to shoot for maybe like a small little battle zone thing that people can play on, maybe a 4x4 kind of situation. That's still up in the air, but yeah, I want to echo what Judge has said. Like, I think one of the coolest things about this is the style, right? It's an architecture that doesn't see a lot of terrain kits for, so it's very unique.
But it is so like Warhammer.
Yeah.
Like, it's that Soviet-esque brutalist architecture.
Yeah,
lot of concrete, lot of squares, a lot of triangles. You kind of feel the oppression when you're looking at it, but it is such an awesome set of terrain.
And almost entirely modular too. That's the other thing, is you buy the giant building that we have, and all the walls are designed to work with it. All of the other buildings are designed, to be aesthetically in the same set. I just think it's really cool. It also is another big thing is, there's a lot of people that dual dip games, completely compatible with Infinity, which is nice. The internals of
I think that's what it was originally designed for.
Yeah, the internals for that large building
Infinity
has actual interior rooms that you can actually play out if you want to. I think on a Warhammer table that's a little too far down the detail tree, but it might be fun. Hey man, for like a little 5v5, can I breach you kind of scenario.
Like a 500,000 point, like,
I think
mini battle,
or like a kill team.
Yeah.
Kill team.
I think as far as, obviously this is the start of our set for this, and I think we've got now that we've assembled some of it, we got a really good idea for what we want to do for a whole table concept on this. And I think we're going to deliver another really cool table that's really different. It's not what you see every time. And I'm really happy Brutal Cities decided to sign on and hook us up and work with us. He's been awesome to deal with, and I don't know, man. I couldn't wait for that shipping package to come fast enough. I tell you, ever since we heard about this video and the potential, I've been looking forward to getting my hands on it. But I
Yeah,
guess.
unfortunately, Lucas hasn't really gotten to do anything other than see the pictures.
Yeah.
Trust me, Lucas. Once you see this train, I think you're gonna feel like it was worth the back and forth, and
Yeah.
like getting it sent our way, because it's
Yeah, it came all the way from Australia.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
The guy's been a pleasure to deal with, though. So
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and it was awesome. I'm looking forward to in the future getting a table built around his stuff, and like being able to showcase more of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think that wraps up the last of our table coverage. So I don't really have much of anything else to add, guys. Do you? Anything else you want to talk about? I
I
guess
think that covers everything I want to
yeah.
give away.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I want to shout out one more time Death Ray Designs and
Mhm.
Brutal Cities.
Absolutely.
Like, fantastic dudes. They have done, Brutal Cities sending us that stuff, and Death Ray Design. Like, I cannot explain how much I appreciate Death Ray Designs. They
Mhm.
are a fantastic set of like all of their terrain I enjoy.
Yep.
But I
Definitely.
am an unabashed fanboy of it. So take
Yeah.
take my word for what it is.
Absolutely. So I guess before we leave, I guess Lucas, what do you have left for Adepticon? Like, what's left? So we're 6 or 7 or whatever, 8. I don't even know how many days are left. 8 days, 9 days till we leave.
I'm leaving next. Today we're recording on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm leaving next Wednesday, so
Yeah.
that's looks like 10
Yeah.
days.
10 days. So 10 days to Adepticon. What are you on right now?
Basically just prepping everything for transport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're pretty much got everything we want, done. I'm not
Yeah.
painting anymore. We're done painting terrain. We're done painting NPCs, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Had quite a bit of help with that, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
No.
we're pretty much just prepping it for transport.
Do you want to give a shout out to who's been helping you out with that, so that they can get the recognition they deserve?
Oh, they have a podcast too, right? I think.
Yes.
Yeah, let's give them some.
Yes. So my buddy John Christensen has been really helping big time. He's actually providing some tables for Adepticon as well, and he's been burning midnight oil trying to get those done. He's been working harder than I have, to be completely honest with you on it.
What is he?
And he's one of the main hosts on
What does he drink?
Horus
We'll have to get him
Heresy
a bottle.
Accountability Buddies. I
The
don't know.
Horse-
That's a good question. I'll
Horus
ask.
Heresy Accountability Buddies.
Accountability Buddies. Go and check it out, guys.
Yeah, Horus Heresy Accountability Buddies. I was on the most recent episode. I'm a on and off host on there, but he's like one of the main hosts. I think he's on every one. So they have more of a rotating chair.
And you were also on 2 other podcasts recently. So if people wanted to try and get more information or glean some more, hear some more talk, you want to give those as well? Because I don't have that information in front of me.
Yeah, I was on the Age of Darkness podcast, which is one of the OGs in the Horus Heresy space. That's JP.
Oh, yeah.
And he's had some, he's had different hosts, and right now it's JP and Darren from the UK, and sometimes Miles from the Legend Studio.
Right.
And then another guy from Oklahoma named Martin Emery just started a new podcast called Fires of Betrayal, and I was on episode 1 of that.
Yeah.
So we talked about quite a bit of stuff, but he's trying to get that off the ground. He used to publish a podcast called God Engine Cast, which is a Titanicus podcast.
Yeah.
And he started playing Horus Heresy now, so he's getting into Horus Heresy podcasting and kind of making a podcast that is more than just Titanicus. He's going to be Titanicus, Aeronautica, kind of a all-encompassing podcast for Horus Heresy.
And the Age of Darkness is, I think that was a really cool interview. If you need a suggestion, go listen to it. I think it's, not only is it cool to hear Lucas talk about our events, but they had the LVO event director, who actually is running an event at Adepticon as well. They had him on as well.
Yeah, his name's Arthur Alec.
Yeah, they had Arthur on and was talking about the LVO stuff that happened in the narrative space. So he's doing really cool things. We're trying to do really cool things. I think it's going to be a good space to be in the future, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't think we have...
And they have a really well-rounded show, too.
Yeah, and so I don't think we have
It's
a
more
plan.
than just gaming or painting or whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So I don't think we have a plan to reconvene before Adepticon. I think we're probably all going to be screaming busy till the end. I finished painting my table, and I somehow feel like there's still a lot of stuff to do. So we're gonna cram that out, and so I don't know that we'll get back together before Adepticon, but absolutely afterwards, I just want to completely tear apart everything we do after the event. You know, go through not only everything that we did that was successful, but also the lessons that we learned walking away from it. Right? Because for a lot of us, none of us have done anything on this scale, and for a lot of us, this is new territory. Yeah. So we're looking forward to learning a lot of lessons, but hopefully, we've done enough research and preparations to deliver on a good event, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if nobody has anything else, I guess we'll wrap it up. Just a reminder to check our link tree. It has all of our information in it, links to our stores, links to the audios that you heard previously, links to written copies, links to Phyrix events, and most importantly, our Discord server. You can talk directly to us if you have any questions. We are fully open and, there to talk if anybody's got any stuff, right?
Yep.
All right, guys.
Yep.
I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll talk to you guys next time.